My brother stood in my grandmother's kitchen and told me I didn't deserve a single dollar of her inheritance because I had never been real family. Then my aunt slid a document across the table and told me to sign away my share before I embarrassed myself. What none of them knew was that Grandma had hidden one final letter inside the recipe box she left specifically to me. And that letter changed everything. At first, I thought this was just an inheritance story about a family fighting over a will. But by the time the truth came out, it had become a revenge story none of them saw coming. My name is Claire. I'm 34, and for most of my life, my mother's side of the family treated me like an obligation they couldn't quite get rid of. My mom was Grandma Ruth's oldest daughter. She died when I was 13, after a short and brutal fight with pancreatic cancer. My dad was never really in the picture after that. He paid what he had to pay, called on birthdays when he remembered, and started a new family 2 states away. So Grandma Ruth became my person. She wasn't soft in the way people imagine grandmothers being soft. She didn't bake cookies while humming in an apron. She wore old cardigans with stretched sleeves, kept a hammer in the junk drawer, and could silence an entire room just by looking over her glasses. But she was steady. Every Friday after school, she picked me up in her blue Buick and took me to her house, a little yellow place with white shutters and a porch swing that squeaked if you moved too fast. She taught me how to make chicken soup, how to balance a checkbook, how to change a tire, and how to leave a room when people confused cruelty with honesty. That house was the only place I felt like I still belonged after my mom died. My Uncle Mark, Grandma's younger son, never liked that. Mark had 2 kids, my cousin Tyler and my cousin Jess. Tyler was the golden child. He was charming, loud, athletic, and always in some kind of trouble that magically became someone else's fault. Jess was quieter, but she followed whatever Tyler said because that was easier than being his target. When we were teenagers, Tyler used to joke that I was Grandma's charity project. At Thanksgiving one year, he said, "You only come around because you know she feels sorry for you." Everyone laughed, except Grandma. She put her fork down and said, "Tyler, being cruel doesn't make you clever." He rolled his eyes. Uncle Mark muttered something about people being too sensitive. My Aunt Denise gave me that tight smile she always wore when she wanted me to understand I had ruined the mood by existing. That was the pattern for years. If Tyler needed money for school, Grandma helped. If Jess needed a car, Grandma helped. If Uncle Mark's business had a bad quarter, Grandma helped. But if Grandma gave me anything, even a birthday card with $50 in it, Aunt Denise would say, "Must be nice being Ruth's favorite." The funny part was that I wasn't the favorite. I was just the one who showed up. When Grandma broke her hip, I was the one who took time off work to stay with her after surgery. When she forgot to pay the electric bill because her medication made her foggy, I helped set up automatic payments. When she got too tired to keep up with the yard, I drove over on Saturdays and mowed it myself. Uncle Mark lived 20 minutes away. Tyler lived 10. Jess lived across town. They visited on holidays, took pictures with Grandma, posted captions about family first, then disappeared again. I never kept score out loud. Grandma would have hated that, but I noticed. 2 years before she died, Grandma asked me to come over alone. She was sitting at the kitchen table with her old recipe box in front of her. It was wooden, chipped at the corners, and stuffed with index cards in her handwriting. She tapped the lid twice and said, "When I'm gone, this is yours." I laughed because I thought she was being dramatic. "Grandma, don't talk like that." "I'm 82, she said. "I can talk however I want." Then she looked at me in that direct way of hers. "There are things in this family people don't say because they think silence keeps the peace. It doesn't. It just teaches the loudest person that they get to write the story." I asked her what she meant. She shook her head. "Not yet. Just remember what I said." At the time, I thought it was one of those strange conversations older people have when they're thinking about mortality. I didn't know she was trying to prepare me. Grandma passed away on a rainy Tuesday morning in March. I was at work when the nursing home called. She had been there for only 3 weeks after a fall that led to pneumonia. I had seen her the night before. She had been tired but lucid. She squeezed my hand and said, "Don't let them make you smaller than you are." Those were the last words she ever said to me. The funeral was small, mostly family, a few neighbors, one woman from her church who cried so hard I had to hold her hand. Tyler showed up late wearing sunglasses indoors. Jess cried quietly. Uncle Mark shook hands like he was hosting a business event. At the memorial lunch afterward, Aunt Denise cornered me near the coffee urn. "You know, Claire," she said, "your grandmother cared about all of us. I hope you don't make this harder than it has to be." I had no idea what she meant. I said, "I'm not trying to make anything hard." She gave me that smile again. Good, because grief can make people greedy. I remember staring at her, thinking I must have misunderstood. A week later, Uncle Mark texted me that we needed to meet at Grandma's house to handle the will reading and final decisions. That phrasing bothered me, because Grandma had told me years earlier that her attorney, Mr. Alvarez, had her estate documents. But I assumed maybe this was informal, just family gathering before the official meeting. When I got there, the locks had already been changed. I stood on the porch with my key in my hand, trying it twice before Tyler opened the door from inside. He smirked. "Old key doesn't work anymore." I said, "Why were the locks changed?" "Because the house is part of the estate," he said. "We can't just have people wandering in and taking things." People. That was the first warning bell. Inside, the living room looked wrong. Grandma's framed photos had been taken down from the mantel. Her sewing basket was gone. The blue blanket she always kept on the recliner was missing. Aunt Denise, Uncle Mark, Tyler, and Jess were all sitting at the kitchen table. There was a folder in front of Uncle Mark. Nobody offered me coffee. Nobody asked if I was okay. Uncle Mark cleared his throat like he was about to start a staff meeting. "Your grandmother's will was very straightforward," he said. "The house goes to me as her only living child. The savings are to be divided between my children. You were left some personal items." I blinked. That doesn't sound right. Tyler laughed under his breath. "Of course it doesn't sound right to you." I ignored him and looked at Uncle Mark. "Grandma told me Mr. Alvarez had her will." Aunt Denise's face hardened. "Ruth changed things near the end." "She was barely awake near the end," I said. Uncle Mark slid a stapled packet toward me. "This is the updated copy." I looked down at it. It was only 3 pages. The signature at the bottom looked shaky but not impossible. Grandma's name was there. The date was from 6 weeks before she died, when she was already in and out of the hospital. According to that document, I was left the wooden recipe box and its contents, along with any family photographs not otherwise claimed. That was it. The house, the savings account, the small investment fund Grandma had spent 40 years building, all of it went to Uncle Mark, Tyler, and Jess. My throat felt tight, but I tried to stay calm. "I want to speak with Mr. Alvarez." Uncle Mark's jaw flexed. "There's no need." "There is for me." Tyler leaned back in his chair. "Why? So you can try to squeeze more money out of a dead woman?" I looked at him. "Don't say that." "Then don't act like it," he said. "You've been hanging around Grandma for years, doing little favors, making sure she felt guilty enough to leave you something, and now you're mad it didn't work." Jess whispered, "Tyler, stop." But he didn't. No, somebody should say it. We all know what this is. Claire wants to play the poor orphan forever, so everyone feels bad for her. I felt heat rise in my face. Aunt Denise folded her hands on the table. "Claire, this inheritance story you've built in your head, where Ruth secretly wanted you to have everything, is not reality. You need to accept that." "I never said I wanted everything," I said. "I just want to know what she actually wanted." Uncle Mark pushed another paper toward me. "We need your signature acknowledging receipt of your items and confirming you won't contest the will." I stared at the line with my name printed beneath it. "You want me to sign this today?" "It's cleaner for everyone," he said. Tyler snorted. "Unless she wants to drag the family through court because a recipe box wasn't enough." That was when Aunt Denise said the sentence I can still hear perfectly. "Claire, your mother is gone. Ruth is gone. At some point, you have to stop using dead women to demand a place in this family." The room went silent. Even Uncle Mark looked down. For a second, I couldn't breathe. Then I stood up. "I'm not signing anything." Tyler stood too. "Of course not." I picked up my purse. Uncle Mark said, "Claire, don't make this ugly." I turned back. "You changed the locks on my grandmother's house before she was even buried a week. I'm not the one making it ugly." I left with my hands shaking so badly I could barely get my car key into the ignition. That night, I cried in a way I hadn't cried since my mother died. Not just because of the money. I need to say that clearly. This was never only about money. It was about being told, over and over, that the years I spent loving Grandma didn't count because Tyler had the right last name and I didn't. It was about them acting like grief belonged to them and I was trespassing in it. 2 days later, I called Mr. Alvarez's office.
His receptionist was quiet when I gave my name. Then she said, "Mr. Alvarez has been expecting your call." My stomach dropped. He scheduled me for the next morning. His office was above a bank downtown, with dark wood furniture and shelves full of binders. Mr. Alvarez was in his 70s, with silver hair and kind, tired eyes. The moment I sat down, he slid a sealed envelope across the desk. "Your grandmother instructed me to give this to you privately if there was any dispute after her passing." I stared at the envelope. My name was written on it in Grandma's handwriting. Claire Bear. Nobody had called me that except her. My hands started shaking again, but this time for a different reason. Mr. Alvarez said gently, "Take your time." Inside was a letter, 3 pages long. Grandma wrote that she knew Mark and Denise would try to pressure me. She wrote that she had seen Tyler taking advantage of her for years. She wrote that she had been lonely after my mom died, and that I had become the person who made her feel remembered, not managed. Then came the part that made me stop breathing. She had not changed her will 6 weeks before she died. The document Uncle Mark showed me was not the final will. In fact, Grandma had signed her actual final will 18 months earlier in Mr. Alvarez's office with 2 witnesses and a notarized affidavit from her doctor confirming she was mentally competent. In that will, the house was left to me. Not because she wanted to punish Mark, but because, in her words, Claire is the only one who treated this house like a home instead of a future asset.
The savings were divided into 3 portions, one for Mark, one for Jess, and one placed in a small education trust for Tyler's daughter, who was 5 and had nothing to do with any of this. Tyler himself was left $1. There was also a clause stating that if any beneficiary attempted to submit a fraudulent will, pressure another beneficiary into signing away rights, or remove property from the home before inventory, their share could be challenged and reduced. Mr. Alvarez watched me read it. Then he opened a folder. "Your grandmother became concerned last year," he said. "She believed your uncle was trying to convince her to transfer the house before her death. She refused. After that, she asked me to keep additional records." He showed me emails from Uncle Mark asking about simplifying the estate.
He showed me a note from Grandma documenting a conversation where Mark told her Claire would sell the house the second she got it. He showed me a copy of a bank statement where several large withdrawals had been flagged, withdrawals Grandma later disputed. None of it was dramatic movie evidence, no secret recording with a villain confessing, no hidden camera moment, just documents, dates, signatures, proof. And somehow, that made it worse, because it meant Grandma had known. She had spent the last year of her life protecting me from her own son. I asked Mr. Alvarez about the document Uncle Mark showed me. He sighed. "I can't make a determination without seeing the original, but based on what you described, it was never filed with this office, and your grandmother did not execute any estate changes through me during that period."
"So what do I do?"
"You do not sign anything," he said, "and you allow me to contact them." 3 days later, Uncle Mark called me 12 times. I didn't answer. Then Tyler texted me, "You really ran to a lawyer? Grandma would be ashamed." I almost replied. I typed 3 different responses, deleted all of them. Then I remembered Grandma saying silence lets the loudest person write the story. So I wrote 1 sentence. "Mr. Alvarez will be contacting everyone about the valid will." Tyler replied within seconds, "You selfish witch." Then, "That house belongs to my dad." Then, "If you take this from us, you're dead to this family." I screenshotted everything and sent it to Mr. Alvarez. The official estate meeting was scheduled for the following Friday at Mr. Alvarez's office. I almost didn't go. Not because I was scared of losing. By then, I knew the truth was on my side. I was scared because part of me still wanted someone in that room to say, "We're sorry. We hurt you. We were wrong." That is the embarrassing thing about a toxic family. Even when you know they are toxic, a small part of you keeps hoping they will suddenly become the family you needed. They didn't. Uncle Mark arrived in a navy suit, carrying the same folder from Grandma's kitchen. Aunt Denise came with him, lips pressed into a thin line. Tyler wore jeans and a smug expression.
Jess sat near the end of the table and wouldn't meet my eyes. Mr. Alvarez began calmly. Thank you all for coming. We are here to review the estate documents of Ruth Elaine Whitaker. Uncle Mark interrupted. We already reviewed them as a family. Mr. Alvarez looked at him over his glasses. No, Mr. Whitaker, you reviewed a document that was not provided by this office. Aunt Denise said, Ruth had the right to change her mind. Of course, Mr. Alvarez said, had she done so legally. Tyler laughed. So Claire got to you. Mr. Alvarez didn't react. I represented your grandmother for 26 years. Claire did not get to me. Then he read the actual will. When he said the house was left to me, Tyler slammed his palm on the table. No, absolutely not. Uncle Mark's face went gray. Aunt Denise turned to me. Are you proud of yourself? I said nothing. Mr. Alvarez continued reading. When he got to the $1 inheritance for Tyler, Tyler stood up so fast his chair hit the wall.
That bitter old woman, he said. That was the moment something in me went cold. I looked at him and said, Don't. He pointed at me. You manipulated her. No, I said, I visited her. You poisoned her against us. I opened my purse and pulled out a folder of my own, not because I needed it legally. Mr. Alvarez already had everything. I brought it because I knew my family. I knew they would try to turn the room into a performance where I was the greedy villain in their family drama. So I laid out copies of Kyler's texts, then copies of the messages Uncle Mark had sent Grandma about transferring the house. Then the bank records Mr. Alvarez had cleared me to reference, showing the disputed withdrawals. Then I pulled out the paper they had tried to make me sign at Grandma's kitchen table. You all sat in her house, I said, my voice shaking but clear, beside the table where she taught me to make soup when my mom was dying. And you told me I was greedy for asking questions. You changed the locks. You took down her pictures. You tried to make me sign away my rights before I even knew what they were. Aunt Denise whispered, We were trying to avoid conflict. No, I said. You were trying to avoid witnesses. Jess started crying. Tyler scoffed. Oh, here we go. But Jess looked at him and said, Tyler, shut up. Everyone froze. She wiped her face and looked at Mr. Alvarez. I didn't know the will was fake, but I knew Dad and Mom were trying to get Claire to sign something before she talked to you. Aunt Denise snapped, Jessica. Jess shook her head. No, I'm done. Grandma asked me last Thanksgiving if Tyler had been pressuring Dad about the house. I told her I didn't know, but I did. Uncle Mark closed his eyes. Mr. Alvarez made a note. That was the reversal. Not a screaming match. Not some dramatic revenge story where everyone begged on their knees. Just the slow collapse of a lie they thought they could all hold together if they kept calling me selfish loudly enough. Mr. Alvarez explained the consequences. The actual will would be filed. The house was mine. The estate inventory would be completed professionally. Anything removed from the property had to be returned or accounted for. The questionable withdrawals would be reviewed. The attempted waiver I'd been pressured to sign would become part of the record. And because of the clause Grandma included, Uncle Mark's share could be challenged if the court found he knowingly attempted to interfere with the estate. That was when Uncle Mark finally looked at me. Claire, he said, suddenly softer, this has gone too far. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because people like him always decide something has gone too far the moment consequences arrive. He said, Your grandmother wouldn't want us fighting. I said, Grandma wrote a clause because she knew you would do exactly this. He flinched. Aunt Denise tried a different approach. Think about what this will do to the family. I looked around the table. What family? Nobody answered. After the meeting, Jess followed me to the hallway. She looked smaller than I remembered. Tired. Ashamed. I'm sorry, she said. I should have said something sooner. Yes, I said. You should have. She nodded, crying harder. I was scared of Tyler. And my parents. I know that's not an excuse. It's not, I said. But thank you for telling the truth today. She asked if we could talk sometime. I told her maybe, but not yet. That was one of the hardest things I've ever done. The old me would have comforted her immediately. I would have made her guilt easier to carry so she wouldn't feel abandoned. But I was tired of being the place everyone dumped their guilt after they were done hurting me. The next month was awful.
Uncle Mark hired his own attorney, then backed down when the bank records and Grandma's letter became impossible to explain away.
Tyler posted vague things online about money showing people's true colors. Aunt Denise called me once from a blocked number and said, "I hope that house keeps you warm when you have no family left." I said, "It already did." Then I hung up. The stolen inheritance they thought they had secured unraveled piece by piece. Some items had to be returned. Grandma's sewing basket came back with half the contents missing. Her blue blanket appeared in a trash bag on my porch. Several framed photos were returned after Mr. Alvarez sent a formal letter. The savings were distributed according to the will. Jess received her portion. Uncle Mark's share was reduced after a settlement because he agreed not to contest the estate further. Tyler got exactly what Grandma left him. $1. I didn't frame it. I didn't mock him. I didn't even mention it. Karma didn't need my help. The first night I slept in Grandma's house after everything was finalized, I expected to feel victorious. I didn't. I sat on the living room floor surrounded by boxes, holding her recipe card for chicken soup, and cried until my head hurt. Because winning did not bring her back. It did not give me the family I wanted. It did not erase Aunt Denise's words, or Tyler's cruelty, or Uncle Mark's betrayal. But it did give me something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. I painted the kitchen the same soft blue Grandma always talked about, but never got around to doing. I fixed the porch swing. I planted lavender by the walkway, because she said it reminded her of her mother. And on the shelf above the stove, I keep the wooden recipe box. Inside it, behind the cards for pot roast and lemon bars, is Grandma's letter. Sometimes I reread the last paragraph. Claire, if they call you greedy, remember that wanting what I freely gave you is not greed. If they call you selfish, remember that protecting yourself is not selfishness. And if they tell you this house was never yours, remember that love is not measured by who shouts the loudest after someone dies. It is measured by who showed up while they were alive. I don't speak to Tyler. I don't speak to Aunt Denise. Uncle Mark sent one email saying he hoped we could move forward as a family. He never used the word sorry. I didn't respond. Jess and I have had coffee twice. It's awkward, but honest. I don't know if we'll ever be close. I'm not forcing myself to forgive her just because she finally did one decent thing. That might sound harsh to some people. A few years ago, it would have sounded harsh to me too. But this inheritance story was never just about a house. It was about a toxic family thinking they could erase me from my grandmother's life, then act offended when I refused to disappear. It was about family betrayal dressed up as keeping the peace. And in the quietest way, it became a revenge story. Not because I destroyed anyone, but because I finally stopped protecting the people who had been hiding behind lies. So tell me honestly, what would you have done in my place? Would you have fought for the house Grandma left behind, even if it meant losing the rest of the family? Or would you have walked away just to keep the peace? And if your relatives tried to steal your inheritance, humiliate you while you were grieving, and then ask for forgiveness only after the truth came out, would you forgive them? I'd really like to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if this inheritance story kept you listening until the end, thank you. Every like, comment, and subscription truly helps support this channel and keeps these stories going. Subscribe for more inheritance stories and revenge stories where the truth finally comes out. I'll see you in the next story.